Welcome to Quiltripping Travel with Rose, a Big Blend radio podcast featuring award-winning travel writer and photographer, Rose Palmer. So welcome everyone. Today, Rose is taking us on another cruise. And yes, it is a barge cruise. And this is a luxury barge cruise, of course. And she's taking us to France, to the Gascony region. And here it is again. Rose has luxury. She floats down these wonderful canals, and this is all through European waterways. Yes, she had wine tastings. Yes, she had fabulous food. Yes, she experienced history, UNESCO World Heritage sites. I don't know. And cycling, down the canal side. Like just the barge could be floating and she can race the barge. Did you do that, Rose? Welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Yes, I wouldn't say it was racing. This was not the Tour de France. I could probably walk faster than the barge because they do go very slowly down the canals. It's slow travel at its ultimate. So I was leisurely cycling on the towpaths as the barge was cruising, and I would get off at a lock, and then the captain would say, "Well, where do you want to get back on? There's a lock in 500 meters. There's another one in a kilometer. There's one, we can do 6 kilometers or whatever." The spirit moved me, and then I would cycle, and I would convince myself that I was working off the calories that I had just had at lunch. Like I said, I was fooling myself, but it was really, really pleasant. It was one of the best canals, I think, that I've done for biking on the towpath, because it was beautifully shaded. They had these huge alleys they call them plane trees. We call them sycamores. Old trees with canopies that kind of grew over the canal and created some beautiful dappled shade and dappled colors. So it was really, really pleasant. And it's flat. It's well maintained. It's used for recreation now. So these canals, as we've talked about in previous sessions, were put in place for transporting goods and hauling goods throughout France before trucks, before trains. So the earliest canals were built in the 1600s. Obviously they don't need to be used for that anymore, because now they have modern transportation to carry goods and cargo throughout the country. And so they've invested and changed over these canals for recreation. And that's exactly what they're used for. And it's whether it's barging with a company like I did, where they do all the work, or whether you hire your own boat and go down the canals, and a lot of the French do that. It's a very popular pastime. And then the towpaths, so the towpaths were used because the horses would pull the boats and the barges. Again, right before they had motors and all this, they would pull the barges. Well, now these towpaths are paved, and they're well maintained, and they're flat and easy to bike on. So it's just a real joy to do that experience and spend half an hour or an hour just biking along the canal as the boat moves slowly through one lock and another, and then get back on and be greeted with a glass of wine or a cocktail or whatever you want.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
a tough life. What can I say? It was.
I know. I was looking at your photos, and Rose has a great article. It is linked in the episode notes, so you can plan this. Again, it's through European Waterways, and this was on the Rosa.
Yes.
And I was, yeah, I'm like, okay, this is definitely made for Rose. Okay. But looking at it, it just looked so, you were out in June, so right at the beginning of summer, and I know Europe went through a heat wave. I mean, the States has gone through a heat wave. Grapes are being harvested early, but so you missed a lot of that, and also the fires, unfortunate fires out there. But, this area looks so beautiful and the history so deep. But cruising on the Rosa, the food looks beyond exceptional. I was looking at your photos going, how do they even think to make this? I mean, where did that creativity come from?
I
Like that,
know.
the white chocolates, and then, are you getting all this fresh fruit from the local orchards? Because this area of Gascony in your article said this is really like France's breadbasket. So you're in an abundant land,
Yes. Yes. And I had really not known much about Gascony before doing this trip. It's not on the normal tourist route. Southern France and Provence are very popular. This part of France isn't necessarily quite up there as far as certainly international tourists, which is what really made it very nice. For me, I thought, because it was not crowded. And it wasn't busy. I was already there in the tourist season. So I was there in mid-June, and I was there in between heat waves. It was, as we were leaving, it was starting to get really, really hot. But with those trees over the canal, I think it decreased the temperature by at least 10 degrees. And as we were cruising, it was a very pastoral scene and scenery. We'd pass through a few villages here and there and dock for overnight in towns. But in general, we did just see fields and lots and lots of orchards with the orchards covered with like netting to shade them a little bit because it's southern France, and also, to keep some of the birds and all away. And as far as the food, I have not been on a barge cruise where the food wasn't fantastic. And that was the case here. Our chef, Mike, just the things that he did. And I'd have to look at all my photos and look at the menu to really remember everything, but every meal was better than the previous one.
Wow.
I think it was on the level of a Michelin star restaurant, just the different elements on a plate. It wasn't just one piece of meat. It would be like 3 different versions and, 3 different types of veggies, all sort of presented in slightly different ways. And same with the desserts. There would be at least 2 or 3 elements to each dessert. And then, of course, the cheeses. I love French cheeses. It's always my favorite element of the meals. So we'd have, dinner is a 4-course meal, which is why I tried to do a little bit of biking just to kind of, like I said, to sort of convince myself that I was working off a few calories. But, there'd be a starter, there'd be a main course, and then there'd be a cheese course, and then there'd be a dessert.
Oh, gosh.
There'd be 3 different cheeses. And they would always all be different, and they would always be all so good. And then lunch would be
paired with wine, I hope.
Of course, paired with wines, most of them local from that region, or from nearby Bordeaux. Good wine. Of course it's good wine. It's France, right?
No, and do they drink wine at lunch?
Yeah. So lunch was 3 courses and 2 bottles of wine. I read, like the Billy Joel song. Bottle of red, bottle of wine, white. And they were available. Obviously you don't have to drink a lot, but they were presented and they were available.
And you're on vacation.
Right.
Yeah. That gives you a lot of, when you're on vacation, do as vacationers do. Have wine at lunch. But you went to a winery and everything, but before we get to all those, the boat itself, Rosa, it's how many people are on there? Because I know these are smaller. This is small ship cruising, really. Small.
It's very small. It's very intimate. So this particular barge had only 4 cabins, so a maximum of 8. But there were only 6 of us, which was very, very nice. And the other 2 couples that joined us we really all clicked, which really, really made it so much more special. One couple was from Australia. The other couple was so sweet. They were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. They were both professors of classics at a small college in Indiana. So we had some really great discussions. And their actually anniversary was on the very last night of the cruise, which is when, there's a special captain's dinner, which the crew usually goes all out for that to begin with. And then because that was also their anniversary evening, they went even more all out, and they put up balloons everywhere. They made for their room, instead of a towel animal, they made a towel 3-layer cake with candies instead of candles. And then they just went all out decorating the table. It was for dessert, the chef made this beautiful heart-shaped 4-layered mousse cake that was just absolutely gorgeous. It was a chocolate type of mousse cake with other things in it, as layers in it as well. And it was delicious. It was really, really special evening that I think was definitely memorable for them, and they will certainly never forget. And it made it special for the rest of us as well.
That's really cool. And they're celebrating with new friends. And obviously, I think part of the reason people cruise is not having to make food, but beyond that, you're having exceptional meals and it's so personalized, like you're saying, this personal attention to detail. it's priceless, really. And so
It
I think
is.
when
It
you
is.
leave an experience like that, the first thing you want to do is do it again.
Yes. Yeah. I get so spoiled on those cruises. They really are one of my favorite holidays and vacations because everything is done for you and you don't have to think about it at all. And I mean, I love traveling and I love traveling independently and doing my own thing.
Hmm.
But, in this case, it's the total opposite because I don't have to do anything for myself. But it's not this big, huge tour group, right? You're not traveling with 20, 30, 50 other people. It's a very intimate environment. And so it just makes it feel very personal. And and the attention and the care that you get is very personal. So, I mean, by day 2, they knew that I liked sparkling water. So I'd be sitting up on deck as we were cruising and our hostess would just come up and bring me a glass of, sparkling water with ice and a lime in it because
Oh, wow.
she knew that's what I liked. And, same for everybody else. It's like she knew exactly what they liked and what they wanted.
Don't we all want to be treated like that in our house?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that doesn't. Well, but now speaking of the food on this cruise,
Mhm.
this specific barge, right? The barge itself,
Yes.
it had its own TV show, didn't it? Or something?
So it had been, yes. So the BBC, Rick Stein from the BBC, and I guess he's popular in the UK, and I think even in Australia. I don't think we know of him as well here, but he did a series on the Rosa back in the early 2000s, and he, was a travel slash he's a chef cooking show. So she did become a little bit of a celebrity back in the
Oh,
day.
Rosa. Go, Rosa.
Yeah.
Hey, but what a great setting for a cooking show. Honestly,
Right.
that's a fantastic setting. But so that is so lodging. Did you sleep well? Because I know that's another thing
Yes.
that you enjoy sleeping on a barge on a barge.
Uh, well, so it's docked in place overnight, so it's not moving. So yes, I did sleep very well. The rooms are air conditioned, so you don't have to worry about hot weather. Or if you're cruising in the cooler months, they're also heated. And yeah, slept very well. There's an ensuite bathroom with a shower. I mean, it's got everything you need. Now, yes, the room was on the, I like to call it on the cozy side. So if I was taking a shower and getting ready, my husband would be up chatting. And then once I was done, he'd go in and get ready because just so we wouldn't get underfoot with each other.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
that's really all we did in the room was just sleep and change and shower. And the rest of the time we were usually up on the top deck because if we weren't out on an excursion exploring something, then we would be on the boat and the boat would be moving. And the most pleasant place to be was when it was moving was back up on the top deck and to watch the scenery go by. And, there were umbrellas so that we would be in shade. If we approached a bridge, we quickly all learned how to take down the umbrellas
Yep,
because the barge
yep.
structure just fit under the bridges without the height of the umbrellas. So we would just take them down, go under the bridge, and then just quickly put them back up again. Easy peasy.
So you
Um,
get to be part of that movement, which is good too, But now the tell everybody about like really where you were cruising, like where did you start and end? And I know you did some incredible excursions. Yes, wine tasting as always, but you went to one of the most beautiful villages in France. This is so cool. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the route. Is it a route?
yeah. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
okay.
route, canal.
Yeah.
So the Canal de Garonne actually extends all the way from Toulouse to near the Atlantic on the river with on the border with Bordeaux. We only did a small portion of it, so we only did about 70 miles or so. So each day the boat doesn't travel all that far. Like I said, it's slow travel. And we started in Toulouse and headed kind of northwestish. And each day we would have a different excursion, in the morning while it was still kind of cool. Usually kind of do one or two different things. And like you said, one of them was stopping. We stopped in a 3 or 4 different towns along the way and walked around to sightsee. And, I mean, it's France. That part of France was part of the Roman Empire. So, we're not talking 200 years of history. We're talking 2,000 years of history in some
Yeah.
places. And, many of them still have the core of the town is still has the original cobblestone streets and layouts. So narrow little streets with stone buildings, and that, still kind of keep the medieval feel from when many of the towns were built. Oh, excuse me. So France has this, I don't want to say it's a competition. It's a designation to be acknowledged as one of the most beautiful villages in France. So there isn't just one, there's lots. I forget how many there are. And they have to apply to be considered for this designation. And then by being acknowledged as one of the most beautiful villages in France, that then becomes a tourism destination, because then people want to go see, well, why is this one of the most beautiful villages? So it helps to attract visitors. And I think on a couple of the other barge cruises that I've done, we did the same thing. One of the villages was also designated that. So yeah, we kind of walked around. It was late I'm drawing a blank on the name of the town. But we walked around. I was not busy at all by that point in time. Stores had shut. And so we had the place to ourselves.
Wow.
Which, doesn't happen when you go to some of the more touristy spots in France that are very, very popular.
So is it Auvillar? Am I saying it correctly?
That's it. Auvillar, yes.
Auvillar, yeah, because I'm looking at your article here. I mean, it's just these areas. I mean, you went to this UNESCO-listed Abbey of Saint Pierre, right? I mean, that I can't even believe. I mean, when I saw the photos of this, I was just like, this is why we have UNESCO sites. So we protect these very special places that tell so much history. I mean, when you look at how old it is, right? 11th century. How did they do that? So is that still part of that Roman history that you're talking about?
Well, 11th century would be more medieval-ish, early medieval.
Yeah. I got to get my history straight here.
And what was actually kind of sad is that that the Abbey was actually quite huge. That was once all the land and the buildings that were once part of the Abbey. Right now, there's only a small portion that's actually left, and that's protected by UNESCO. They actually put unfortunately, a train line through the middle of what was once most of the Abbey. But the part that's protected, and especially what it's known for, are the sculptures and the detailed sculptures on the front door and of the Abbey, and then the cloisters. So I think I sent you a photo.
Yeah.
The cloister, I mean, I've been to a bunch of different cloisters throughout my travels, and this is obviously the most authentically preserved. The sculptural details are so well preserved and still very crisp. And supposedly they're authentic, that they haven't been redone. They're trying to figure out how to continue to preserve them, because pollution and time and rain have kind of contributed to a little bit of the decay. But there's just so much detail in the sculptures, on all the capitals in particular of the columns that surround the cloister, and then the end pieces that come together to form the corners of the cloisters. I didn't know where to look. I mean, I wanted to take a picture of every single capital, because there was just so much detail in each one of these.
Wow.
And what was actually interesting and important is that this cloister was part of the Camino de Santiago. So it was part of the pilgrimage route.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And so, they would come in, and so these carvings were used to tell stories to the pilgrims. So they actually had a purpose. But it's just really neat to be able to still see them almost complete and intact as they were when they were first carved.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing what you and you think, on these cruises, to be able to experience these without having to drive there, do the bookings, or you know what I mean, that you just can easily get there. One of the places you went to, so that was Montauban. Am I saying that you were in, or is that?
So that's where we started.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we started the cruise, and we ended in Beauvais. My French isn't all that great.
She may cruise there, but the lingo is still coming. She's getting there. You're going to be far ahead of me, that's for sure, on it. But yeah, so the other place that I wanted to talk about was the farm that you went to. This is where you got to not only have wine on another down the road here.
Right.
I'm getting ahead, but you had the cheese tasting at a farm. I mean, come on now, like really.
So I didn't go into a lot of detail on this, because it was just way too much to write about, but we visited the farm where the cows were that they got the milk from to make the cheese. So, and then we saw how we learned how they made the cheese, and then we got to taste it. What was really, really, really cool is the way they milked these cows. So they had an automatic machine. So rather than people connecting the tubes to the udders and milking them twice a day, they had a machine that connected the tubing automatically to the udder.
Yeah.
And they let the cows pretty much dictate when they wanted to be milked. So the cows very quickly learned to walk into this big, huge entry to the machine. They got cleaned. The udders got cleaned off automatically like 3 times and sanitized. And then a robot attached the tubes with the suction to the udder and would milk the cow automatically. And then when it was done, this robot mechanism would remove the tubing, rinse the cow again, and then the cow would leave and another one would go in. And what they discovered by doing this is that the cows would actually go in there like 4 or 5 times a day to get milk. So their milk production actually increased because they just let the cows to go in and get milk when they wanted to.
Because they know their bodies.
Yeah.
It must feel relieving for them.
Probably.
You know?
Yeah, so it was just really fast. I mean, as a techie, nerdy kind of person that I still am, it was just fascinating to watch this and just amazing how, and they would very quietly get in line one behind the other and just stand there and wait. And then when one got done, the next one would go in, and there'd be another one behind her. And then they just kind of let the cows do what they wanted to. So they had access to the outside. If they wanted to go graze, they could, it was a hot day, so they really didn't want to be out there. They came inside. They had fans everywhere. So it was nice and cool. They could access the hay or the grain or whenever they wanted to. They even had like a scrubbing post with this big, huge rotating brush that they could kind of go up against if they wanted to have their back scratched because there were, itchy flies on it or something. I mean, it was amazing how, by treating their cows so well, they were able to increase the amount of milk and the quality of the milk, which then translated to the quality of the cheese. And then the other nice thing about this was that it was a female-owned company. So it was owned by 2 sisters.
Oh, we like that.
Yes, we do. So then after seeing the farm and seeing how they've got milk and all of that, then we walked through the demonstration of the cheese making process. And then we went into the kind of shop area where they sold the cheese and we got to taste a few different varieties.
Oh man. See, that's the cheese thing that's my cheese is my weakness. Cheese and wine are weak. Yeah. And everyone stay tuned because Rose next month will be talking about her African adventures that she just came back from. I mean, I can't believe she's even talking right now because she's jet lagged.
Yes.
But it's a good jet lag. But like the cheese in South Africa to me and also in Europe, right? There's just I can't even. I mean, it's so like every time I go to buy Gouda or eat them, I'm like, please be what I remember, and it's never quite it. But was it like that experience there? And we'll talk about South Africa. But was the cheese that good?
Oh, it's French cheese, yeah, and it's not just Gouda and Edam and Jarlsberg.
Oh yeah,
it's
that's
many different varieties. Yes, it's not just one type of blue cheese. It's the different varieties of blue cheese, and some are stronger and some are not. And then there's different types of goat cheeses and cow's cheeses. Some are soft, some are hard.
Okay, now we're going to go to the pizza part of the podcast. Just now, I'm just kidding, but because we always do end up in pizza somewhere. But
no pizza
in France, right? But here's the other thing you did. You went to, and I don't know how to pronounce this, but you had like a brandy tasting.
So the region is known for their own type of brandy that's called Armagnac, and I had never. I mean, I'd kind of heard of it before, but
I can recognize it by seeing it, the letters,
Right. I'd never tasted it, so we went to a extremely local manufacturer. And it's made from grapes, and then it's it's distilled and aged in barrels and all of that, and aged a long time. And we got to taste it, learn about how it's made. I'm not a big hard alcohol drinker, so all I can say is that I did try it, and it like brandy. It burns, it's so if you like that kind of thing, you're gonna love it.
You're gonna get a little lift.
You're gonna get a big lift, exactly.
Oh, a big lift.
Yeah,
Okay. It's a big lift. All right. Well, hey, why not? So that's what's so neat because it's all local grapes that they use and
right.
you know. So the other thing you said you went to a big market, Castle Saran. I'm not going to try and pronounce this at all, but you went to a big market with the chef. Now this is the cool stuff to me when you get to go shopping with a chef and
Yes,
in a market, right?
yes.
This isn't like going to our local grocery store.
No, 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 no. So it was in Castel Saracen, and
Okay.
it's their weekly market. So each town has a market one day a week where all the farmers from the area, the region, come in with their produce and their cheeses and their meats and the bread. So we walked around, and the chef had an idea of exactly what he was going to cook as far as meats. So he bought the duck, and I forget what else he bought. And then it was up to us to kind of decide, okay, well, what veggies did we want? What fruits did we want? And lettuces. Oh my gosh, the most beautiful lettuces. They looked like dahlias.
Are
Just these
you saying
huge.
this just to make this country a little I don't you've been out of the country for a while, but we have a lettuce problem in this country right now.
No, 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 no. I never, I mean, we have basically three types of lettuce here in the States, right?
Yes.
And then there I saw these lettuces that I had not seen before. And I swear
So like
one,
heirloom lettuce. Yeah.
yes, but I mean, it looked like it was sitting there in the crate, totally unfurled. It looked like a flower.
Oh,
But it was
wow.
green. It was beautiful. It was just gorgeous. And then, I was there in early to mid-June, and it was still the tail end of strawberry season. So, you could smell them, as we were still like, I don't know, 5, 6 stalls away, and you could smell these beautiful, freshly picked strawberries. Like when you go, to a pick your own, and you pick them and you bite into it, and the whole thing is totally red and juicy and tastes the way a strawberry should. I mean, that's what was there in the market. And he actually bought 3 different varieties because it wasn't, I mean, here you get like strawberries, right? I didn't know there were more than one variety because we just get strawberries. So he bought 3 different varieties. And then for dessert at lunch that day, all it was just cut up strawberries with a little bit of cream on top. And it was probably one of the best desserts I had because it was absolutely fresh. They were probably picked that morning or the day before. And each variety had a different flavor or a different
Mm.
taste, but it was strawberry. It tasted like strawberry,
And
but each one
sweet
was a little
without
bit
having to be
different.
sweetened.
Exactly. Yes.
Isn't that the
Oh,
best?
so good. And I mean, that's kind of the key to these markets is it's what's in season. So he said,
Mm.
he's like, yeah, we're at the tail end of strawberry season. In about a week, I won't be able to get them anymore. And cherries, we bought some cherries because
Oh, yeah,
I
I
knew I
saw
was going to,
that photo of the cherries. I was
yes,
like, give to
yes.
Lisa. Lisa's waiting months.
And apricots. I mean, I love
Oh,
apricots.
mm.
My grandmother used to have an apricot tree, and I remember eating apricots that were totally ripe, just picked off the apricot tree, and I can't ever repeat that flavor here because I've tried growing an apricot tree and it's the wrong climate. But there in the market, it was fresh, ripe
Mm.
apricots the way they should taste and cherries the way they should taste. And I knew I was going to miss cherry season here. So, I asked, well, can we get some cherries? And that was served for lunch that day as well. But that's the key to these French markets. It's the farmers bring in what is growing at that season. And then the chef adjusts his menu and his recipes based on what is available when he goes to the market that day.
That's how it's
Um,
supposed to
so
be.
it's how it's supposed to be. So it truly is local farm to table, and
Farm
that's
to
normal.
boat.
Farm to
To
boat,
farm to
table,
barge. Wait a minute. Farm
yes,
to barge. That's
farm to
it.
barge, exactly. Farm to
I
barge,
love this. Farm to barge. That's it. I mean, that's the thing when we talk about the food being such a big deal part of it. I think it is because I think of all the cruises that you've been on, and I know that, you've done like all size, but you
right?
tend to go more on the naturalist cruises and
Like
you know,
those, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but it seems that the cruises that you go on and European Waterways, you've done a few cruises with them. I
Yes.
think, yeah, I mean, they just seem impeccable in that fact that you are going to be immersed in the experience of where you are, learning the history, the cultures, the people, tasting the foods that are
Mhm.
local. And I think that is so
Exactly.
important to, because that is part of the culture. And
Right.
you get to actually taste those and, you're really part of it. And so
Mhm.
that's what slow travel is
Yeah.
so
And you know
so
what?
important for too.
That is hard to do when you're traveling on your own. I've done it both ways. And when I'm on my own, yes, there's great restaurants out there, but I don't always know which ones they are. I don't know which is the farm to table restaurant in the city I'm visiting. I may
Yeah,
not
or those hidden
necessarily
gems because the cruise ship
exactly.
has all the connections. They have the connections. They're in the
Well,
network,
yeah,
you know?
they've got the network, they got it figured out. But if I'm sightseeing on my own and I want to eat now. I'm going to eat at
No,
whatever's close to me, right? Because I'm tired, I want to sit, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry. I just want to eat something, and it may or
before she
may
has
not.
the wow wow.
Exactly, exactly. Before I start getting hangry, and it may or may not be a good meal. And it probably won't be a great meal. Whereas being on doing these barge cruises, you're guaranteed that you're going to get a great meal and it's going to be local and it's going to be fresh and it's going to be better than anything that I can certainly cook or that most people can cook. And, you're going to have great fresh bread with it if you're in France because it's France and, the staff every morning before we get up goes out to the local bakery and gets or boulangerie and gets the fresh bread and gets the fresh croissants for breakfast. And it's all there without even having to think about it. And you don't have to unpack and repack every night. You're there for a week. You unpack once, and then the boat takes you to all these different places. And they have a van that takes you to go to do the sightseeing. So it's just so super easy to get a very authentic, much more authentic experience, I think, in many ways than you
Mm.
can get by yourself. And it's a small group. It's not in a big group. It's at the most, it'll be 8 people on a
That's
barge like the Rosa. Yeah.
can you book the barge like for your family
Oh,
or
yeah. Yeah.
because I think that would be like, a friend's cruise, especially, if you, like an all women's cruise, because I
Right.
think for solo traveling women, like if you just want to go with friends or, fellow travel writers, even like just everyone go together, it sounds like a safe way of traveling
Right.
as a solo person, but like it, it would be
It
like
is.
it would be perfect
It
for
is.
that.
And European Waterways does offer uh, cruises with no single supplements. So not all of them, but if you go on their website and find out which ones they are or email them. And then they charter the boats. I mean, that's half of their business or certainly a good part of their business is charters where people will, celebrate their retirement and bring their family, including kids. And they have programs and they'll keep the kids entertained or they'll celebrate a special birthday
I
or,
think if your kids can do it and they're like a little older enough for understanding the history and
Mhm.
you've gone to castles from this. I mean, because it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like it's too far of an excursion away from the actual barge, right? When
No,
you go
no.
to something. And when you go, does the barge move a little bit down the canal or
No, not normally. Normally it stays put and then you get on and then, I mean, part of the experience is that slow cruising process and just sort of sitting there and enjoying watching the scenery roll by and cruising under these beautiful trees. So normally it doesn't. I mean, maybe occasionally it might have to relocate so that to keep to a schedule, but normally it doesn't. And they'll do programs. So if you charter the boat or the barge, they'll work with you and, you know, plan the itinerary to do what it is that you're interested in. So if you've got kids of different ages, they can do excursions that will be of interest to kids as well. Or they do theme cruises. So they've got, if you're a golfer, they've got golfing cruises. They've got cycling cruises.
it just sounds like such a great adventure, to have, especially so many women are traveling solo more than ever in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And then this, for anybody who's worried about traveling by themselves, or just doesn't want to do the logistics of traveling by
Mm-hmm.
themselves, because I mean, I've done it and I still do it, but it, can get to be a hassle having to figure out how to get from point A to point B and then get to the hotel and then, go walk around, or even if you're booking a tour to get to wherever the tour starts. This is a very easy way to travel by yourself without being alone. And it is very safe because you're on the barge and you're being taken care of by, we had a crew of 4. There were 6 of us and
Wow.
four crew members, and they get to know you very quickly. I mean, honestly, by the end of the week, we all felt like we were part of a family because we were just
Oh, that's nice.
joking around and goofing around, and they quickly learned that we all had a sense of humor, and so they gave it back as we were teasing and making jokes. So it really felt very much like we were part of a family. And
That's
that's,
nice.
again, that's hard to do when you're traveling by yourself, but in this environment, it makes it very easy to do that.
Yeah, especially when you're in a different country.
Hmm.
A gazillion questions come to me. Like, you know what I
Yes.
mean? As you're traveling, like, what's that? What, why, how, what, where?
Right.
And that's what's so great about having fellow travelers and also a crew that knows what's going on, what knows
Yeah,
some of the
yeah.
history. And I think that's really what an exceptional experience. I know what's so interesting with you, Rose, is like it's really true when you say, "Oh, yeah, I know how to," and I do plan all, trips as well. I mean, look at you and your husband road tripping through Alaska and the Yukon wilderness. I mean, you do like you go to like, and then it's like it's time for a cruise,
Well, and,
I
and before this barge cruise, actually, I met up with my husband in France, and we did a 10-day road trip
that's right.
throughout southern France, and we drove it. And I'm telling you, by the time we were done with those 10 days and we dropped off that rental car, I was ready to be taken care of.
She
'Cause,
wanted to cruise. She was ready to be cruised. That's it. She's
um,
like, we did all that. It was fun. And I think there is a joy to both. But when you're in that mood to just, you know what, I need to chill out.
right.
We all need some kind of calm. And this sounds to me like one of those things that you can do. And a lot of people take sabbaticals too. I was just thinking, what a
Mhm.
good way to do a sabbatical, or even sit and write a novel, like, just
Well, if you can do it in a
cruising.
week, but yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. It's slow and it's peaceful and
And
it's
I like
quiet
you
because
can
it's
like,
through the countryside, so you
yeah.
don't have a lot of noise and you don't
Ooh.
appreciate that quiet until then you get off the boat, off the barge, and you have to leave and you're back in the city driving around. But while you're in it, it's just the
Mm.
silence is so pleasant because I think it's hard to get that anymore if you're out of your house, right? If you,
And it also takes time to actually be able to step into to peace and solitude
yes,
because you're so wired, and then
yes,
it's quiet, and then you're like tapping your toes and you're
right.
like antsy, right? And so something like a barge cruise, you're cruising, it's slow movement, you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing things that helps you unwind because
Yes,
to go from extreme to extreme, you need that, So I think that movement helps, like
yes,
train rides and things like that
exactly.
are the same way. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I can sit, I can calm down, I can take in the scenery. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm slowly, oh, I'm having a glass of wine. Oh my, is that a cheese board? Maybe a little sorbet from the strawberries that we got at the market. Look, now I'm going to start
Well,
looking at what I really booked and go, oh, there's an excursion I signed myself up for I didn't know about, but I'm really starting to get excited about this. And by the time you step off, you're like, why are we stopping? Is
and
that anywhere close?
yeah, it is. And I think what really helps to be able to completely relax and slow down is knowing that you don't have to do anything. You know, you don't have to worry about what's for dinner or where you're going for dinner. You don't have to worry about getting to your hotel to go to bed. You don't have to worry about getting up and, okay, well, what am I having for breakfast or where am I going for breakfast? You don't have to worry about, well, how am I going to get to go see that particular site? Because the boat stops, you get off, the van's there, and somebody else drives you. And then you've got a guide who explains it all to you and tells you about the history and tells you what you're seeing and can answer the questions that you have in English, right? But then they also speak French so they can translate if you're trying to talk to somebody else, or if you have a question about a sign, or if you have a question about the culture or how things are done. they're right there. They're a resource, which again, if you're on your own, can sometimes be hard to find. And then you can get back on and totally relax because somebody else will be there to bring you a drink or fix you lunch or fix you dinner. Or you can go take a nap, I mean, it just,
Well, yeah, speaking
yeah.
of naps, that's where I was going to go. Do you see people that get on this kind of cruise? Because I know you've done so many.
Hmm.
They get on, and then all of a sudden they do hit that calm mode.
Yep.
And even though they may have the best excursion that they don't want to miss, they're like, I need to go sleep for the day. I'm not going on an excursion.
Yeah.
See that
Sorry.
happen?
Sometimes, I mean, in general, the excursion, from my experience, we normally have done the excursion sort of in the morning after breakfast. One, when it's cooler, and that's when people have all the energy. And because they've learned, if you give them a really good lunch with, a bottle of red wine and a bottle of
Uh-oh,
white wine,
they're staying on board.
it's, and they're relaxing and they may want to take a nap. They're not going to be interested in going out to see something.
And how
Um,
nice to be able to do that.
Exactly. And the boat is moving slowly, so there's no rocking. I mean, we're talking a couple of feet of water or meters of water, so it's not particularly deep. I think they said if we were to stand in it, it would come up to our waist. So there's no huge waves. You don't have to worry about getting seasick. But yeah, you can just go down and go take a short nap and then
I
come
love it.
back up. Yeah,
See, and that's perfect.
it
That
is.
that is like a perfect day of calm down. And then for some of us like me, I'd be like, I gotta go back in and upload a podcast.
No, 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 no. One of these
Oh,
days, we're going to make you do one of these for a week, and we're not letting you take your computer.
I know if you just take the computer away, I will die.
Yeah.
But it's a good
No,
thing.
there is internet, because everybody
Yeah,
has
no.
Starlink these days, and there is internet, and it works
Oh,
great.
we could do a
Um,
podcast from the barge. Like we could,
we could next time I'm on one. We
and we'll
could.
put like a loudspeaker out so everybody, like all the sheep and whatever out in the fields. I'm just kidding. The cows will go, that's it. We're going in for milk to be milked, Well, listen, Rose, you really have the most amazing experiences. And I know in between all of this luxury, there's so much that goes on for Rose to do this and organize and the actual travel to get to these places, which is really, there is a lot of work and then writing it all and doing it all.
Right.
So we
Yeah, the
appreciate you
photos and
bringing it out to the masses for people to really learn about these really exquisite kind of experiences. And, obviously we know so many people who travel and I know a couple who've done some cruising, but she wasn't really happy with like having to do like 3 excursions in a day kind of thing,
uh,
that she got upset and she's like, that's it. I'm I'm going to my room. That's it. I'm going to my cabin. And he was like, how could you? How could? And she's like, I'm done because it was just not her
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And I kind of feel like for some couples, this is a really nice balance because sometimes in a couple, there's the go-getter and there's the calm person who just likes some quiet time. I'll
Hmm.
go do a little thing. But this would be a nice balance for couples with that kind of energy that you get to do a really nice excursion in the morning, come have some food, some wine, nap, sit out on the deck, or what do you call it?
Or go for a bike ride. I mean,
Go
if you
for a
still have
bike ride.
right, if you have a
Perfect.
lot of energy and the wine and the cheese didn't do you in, then you can go for a bike ride in the afternoon, which is I
I
did that
love it. I
a
would
little
be
bit.
up on that deck the whole time
I don't blame you. I did,
with
I
wine.
tried to do both, but I wanted to do the biking because I enjoyed it. Plus, that was a good way to get photos of the barge. But
Yeah, you got good photos.
I really enjoyed the biking because it was shaded and it was just so pretty with the
Well, yeah, but
trees.
the photos of the barge that you took, I mean, they're class A photos. Like they should be
Oh,
so
thank
happy.
you.
European Waterways, like I'm going, so good photos. And the lighting just seems so
Yeah.
cheerful and bright and happy and just everything felt cheerful in your
Oh,
photos,
well,
you
thank you.
know?
Well, I guess because that's how I felt. And so then I think when I take the photos and then work with them afterwards, I think how I felt about
Yeah.
the trip kind of comes out in the photos.
Yeah, that was a good trip. Well, we
Yeah,
cannot
it is.
wait. We are so excited about next month's conversation about Botswana and South Africa. I don't know how you're going to do all that, but I don't
Well,
know how
it'll
you're
have
going to
to
do
be,
it in one
yeah,
episode.
it'll have to
But
be highlights of my
a
month-long
big
trip.
adventure. It's a big
to
adventure.
Africa. Yes, it was an amazing adventure, and I'd been to Africa before, and I'm glad I had a chance to go again. Hopefully, I get to go again because it's such a unique and special place in the world with all the animals, the diversity, the environment. I mean, there's nothing else like it around the world.
And the people are so amazing.
They really are. They're
I miss them.
friendly. They're outgoing. They take such good care of you. It's a very unique and special experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rose. Happy
Thank
travels.
you.
You're traveling again. I know. We're going to hang up, and she's going to
I'm
be
home
packing her
I'm
bag.
going to be home for a few weeks before I leave again. A few weeks.
Yeah, something's going to change. I know you. All right. Well, everyone, keep up with Rose at quiltripping.com. Her article is up on bigblendmediahouse.com. All the links are in the episode notes. We thank you for tuning in and listening to Quiltripping Travel, a Big Blend Radio podcast here. So take care, Rose. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy travels. Thank you for joining us for Quiltripping Travel with Rose, a Big Blend Radio podcast featuring award-winning travel writer and photographer Rose Palmer. Join us for new episodes every second Thursday. And keep up with Rose at quiltripping.com and follow us at bigblendradio.com.